Welcome to Rosanna, Kay, and Joe. I'm sitting in Joe's seat, giving him a break this week, a little break. I'll still be able to ask him the hard questions, but we are coming off of our really amazing 32nd National Convention. And I just wanted to mention ahead of this week's program that we had that convention last weekend, June 7th to 9th. It was a completely inspiring and exhilarating 3 days of conversations with 300 or so comrades from every corner of the United States, and many Good Morning Revolution fans among them, I must say, which was really fun to meet people and to see so many folks from our sibling parties abroad. And that convention really was the culmination, as we've talked about, of work that we really started in earnest in February of this year. And it was the culmination, but at the same time, it was a renewal and a new beginning for our party. So we now begin the process of really collectively analyzing the convention and exploring new ways and old ways and effective ways to implement our program in our clubs and in our districts. And I just wanted to mention we have really good coverage of the convention in the People's World. There's a great photo essay from there, and also on our YouTube channel, CPUSA CPUSA YouTube channel. And I would recommend everybody subscribe to that channel. We have really good content from the convention up, and that is we also have I want to recommend Joe Sims' appearance on C-SPAN's Washington Journal. I don't think that's on our YouTube page, but it is on C-SPAN's. But on our YouTube page is the main report and the People's World 100th anniversary celebration, and also Knesset member and Israeli Communist Party member Ofer Kasif gave remarks. And that brings us to our first topic. We're still building the movement for a ceasefire. And Mr. Kasif our comrade Kasif, had just come from a huge demonstration in Tel Aviv that morning. And we also had a giant demonstration in Washington, D.C. And today we're going to explore what it means to how mass struggle is effective in all of the work that we do. And we'll be talking about the ceasefire, abortion, pride, and we'll also have a mailbag. But to start us off, we have had these extremely large rallies and a continuous rally. So, Kay, just to start with you, what can you tell us something about what the impact you believe the mass struggle has had on the actual policies that we have seen in the United States and in Israel about this war in Gaza?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is the ruling class is afraid of the power of the people. When we get organized and we come out in our masses and we do so for a sustained months at a time, I think it's important to remember that it only has been a few months, and that in the course of those months, we've gone from Biden saying resolutely, we don't believe that Israel is doing anything wrong, and the protests that we're seeing are not influencing our policy at all the way to coming to Israel just as much as Hamas and saying, these are the terms, you'd better accept them. And even at the international level, things are beginning to change pretty strongly. We've just seen that the UN Security Council unanimously voted for the proposal that Biden was putting forward. And even as I'm speaking, I'm thinking we can't say that it is Biden alone who's putting that forward. The working people of the United States and the oppressed people of the United States have been putting this forward to Biden, telling him that he's not going to win the election if he upholds this pro-war policy, pro-genocide policy, really. Um, and so I think that's what we're beginning to see is the fruits of going out for months and organizing with everyone uh, who believes in the ceasefire and believes that uh, that people can make change in politics.
Exactly. Thanks, Kay. Joe, let's turn to that fact of the fact that there is an election this year. How are the demands for ceasefire complicated by the fact that it is an election year? There's Biden versus Trump, but there's also a number of smaller races in primaries, like Jamal Bowman running against, I guess it's Latimer, sort of centrist so-called centrist candidates who really are not as concerned about the war in Gaza. So how is this struggle complicated by the fact of the election year?
I like to think about, well, good morning, everybody,
Morning.
and happy Friday. And yes, we did have a great convention, and we're looking forward to discussing its implications going forward. I think that one of the big points that we made in the convention is that politics is about platform, it's about program, not so much about individuals. It's about the process of change and how change is implemented, and that has to do with power and relationships of power and who you can affect and who you can't, and what battles can you fight and when, and which ones can you win. And we made the point very strongly in the convention that the only thing that the ruling class understands is you got to compel them to do the right thing, and without that compulsion, they're not going to listen. And I think that Kay was absolutely right that it is because they were demanded because they were backed against the wall, particularly by the vote uncommitted campaigns. They started to shift. They had begun to shift a little bit before that, but and I think, Anita, that impacts elections up and down the ballot, from a school board to a dog catcher, to state representative, to mayor, to senator, House of Representatives, up to and through the presidency. No one, they're doing a big campaign in D.C. now to compel a ceasefire resolution in the city council. And they're meeting big resistance on the part of the city council, and because there's a lot of pressure being put on them, I would imagine, from the right. I mean, everybody and their mother and father now have come out for a ceasefire, but they're still resisting, which says a lot about who is putting pressure on them and from where. Just the other week, the labor movement in D.C. came out to demand that the council have a ceasefire. So I think that there are a multiplicity of issues. They range from Gaza and Ukraine to the issue of healthcare and the ability to organize a union, to housing and so on. And I think that in order for us to, and I say us broadly speaking, to have a positive resolve on those issues in November, is for us to be as organized as possible and to bring as many organized political forces to bear to bring out the vote and to make sure that there is a outcome that is of benefit not only to people in this country domestically, but to people who are struggling around the world, because we don't want an outcome that just benefits us, but wreaks havoc on the people around the world. What did Martin Luther King say? We're all tied up in a mutual web of interconnectedness, and what happens to one affects everyone.
Exactly. Thank you. I was in preparation for today. I did look into the literature a little bit in political science that says it does say that mass struggle makes a big difference ultimately in changing policy, changing institutions and attitudes. Um, but government repression really hampers ability to mobilize. And Rosanna, I don't know if when Kay says suggests that Biden might not win the election, I don't know if that strikes the same fear in your heart as it does in mine. But could you talk a little bit about what we could anticipate from in terms of repression of mass struggle or attempts to repress mass struggle if we are facing a second Trump term? Sorry.
I think it's something that we can't even imagine because you know all the wars have been fought overseas. We don't know what it's like to be in war. A lot of our soldiers go out there and they come back very traumatized because they've never been in any kind of situation or even a line of fire, any of that. So we don't know. So I think for many people it's hard to imagine what that's like because we've never experienced it. Unless you live in neighborhoods where gunfire is prevalent or your house has been shot up, stuff like that. You don't even know what. Sometimes people don't even know what the gunshot sounds like. So I think we can't even imagine it. But it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. It doesn't mean that we will have to face an even harder up the hill or through the thick forest instead of that thin forest that we could have. Um, I have many friends who fear being deported. I have many friends who fear uh, other issues. I mean, even as communists, I think Joe said it correctly. When they come in the morning for some, you better believe they're going to come for us at noon. And and I think it's real. It's not any, this isn't a movie or anything like that. He's already put the platform out there. He's already done it. How effective it will be will depend on the mass movements and their building of consciousness, the organization that exists at the moment in time. If it happens, hopefully we can prevent it. Uh, and it has to be our ultimate work from this day forward is preventing that kind of repression because it's going to happen if it is allowed. We can't you know think that it's not. um, so I think just making sure that we are part of these mass movements. We see that being out there, not just in the streets but writing to pressuring Congress, pressuring the companies that calling for divestment. All of those things make a big difference. They really do. Even when you get a text message asking for money, write and say, have them call for a ceasefire. I get some text messages that are desperate. If you don't respond now, that means you're going to vote for Trump. I ignore them. I'm not going to be intimidated. And so they're a little desperate in trying to get as many people to commit to voting. But I think we need to continue the pressure. I'm really proud of our students. They're really pushing it. They've taken it they brought it to a different level, and I think we need to support it as much as possible. This afternoon in Los Angeles at 3 o'clock, there's going to be a big demonstration in support of the UAW workers who are also calling for divestment.
Excellent. That you're anticipating my next question, and I'll give this one to Joe. Is there more to mass struggle than just organizing demonstrations? And I know some of us are in cities where street demonstrations are kind of dominated by rather sectarian groups. What else is there to mass struggle, and what other factors should we take? And do you have a strategy for cities where really sectarian groups are dominating the street demonstrations?
Well, I think that you're right, Anita, Rosanna, Kay. Mass struggles work. They affect public opinion. The more you do it, the better. There are many different forms of mass struggle. A street festival could be a form of mass struggle. A concert, with a theme could be a form of mass struggle. Strike, picket line could be a form of mass struggle. A YouTube stream that attracts a large audience could be a form of mass ideological struggle. There are different tools that can and should be used, and we should be versatile in the employment of, let's be creative, about how we can conduct ourselves and work with others to build coalitions that employ creative tactics. And I think that the key thing is to build coalitions, that involve people from diverse points of view and organizations around common objectives. That's key, because we can only hope to bring about real change by employing tactics that win working class majorities, and this is a big country, we're talking about 300 plus million people. Even way back when, Lenin recognized that, one of my favorite quotes from him, politics begins with the millions. It doesn't end with the millions. It begins there, and in the era of mass communications, being able to influence the broad working class public, you really need TV stations, you need radio stations, you need websites that can reach millions, and I think that we have a long way to go in reaching that level. But the point is that we're experimenting and aspiring to it. With respect to those you call sectarian, well, we have our views about this or that. But I think that the best way to proceed is initiating coalitions with others that demonstrate in real life, how to go and what to do. And now we're in the summer and people are out on the streets, and so let's think about how to bring together artists, against the war in Gaza, musicians against the war in Gaza. Let's think about bringing forward their unions and associations, and in that way, by demonstrating what we do, uh, uh, finding a way to, in a non-sectarian way, show proof of how we can do things that don't constrain people, don't turn people off, but bring people together in unity around our common objectives, you know. And I think that's a much better way to proceed. That demonstration the other day in Washington, where they surrounded the White House, that was a good thing. I think, you know. And let's think about surrounding Wall Street. Why can't we surround Wall Street? Because a lot of the funding for the war, that's where it's generated. You know, let's surround Chase Manhattan Bank. You know, let's find out where the big oil companies are headquarters. Surround them. You know, and in that way we'll begin to I think find ways to creatively bring pressure to bear on the powers that be to make sure that they change their policies.
Thanks, Joe. I think what you said about coalition building reminds me of the NAACP resolution that I think we have queued up, perhaps. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, the NAACP advertises itself as the oldest civil rights organization. It is coming out with a strong statement for a ceasefire. And this is really a new thing. Kay, are you familiar with this movement in the NAACP, and what do you think about that? Considering the NAACP's role, I don't think they've had much of a role in foreign policy up until this point. What do you make of this? Okay.
I think that's true. I'm not sure how much of a role NAACP has had in foreign policy, but we welcome this. I mean, this is what we're talking about with mass struggle. Any place where people gather to deal with the issues that they face in their daily lives, um, and NAACP being one of them, we encourage them and we try to find ways to bring them into the mass struggle. Just thinking about the connection that the Israeli military has with police forces here in the United States. I think that's a pretty direct connection between the experiences of African Americans here in the States and those who are being oppressed in Gaza and in Palestine in general. And so I see this and I think this is wonderful. This is something that we can build on. I know many places NAACP is one of the first organizations or one of the only organizations that may exist in a particular place just because they've been around for so long and people know the name and they know what they stand for. And so I think we should take a look at this and see where we can build alongside them if they haven't been building locally already. I know they have a similar structure um, to many different nonprofits where uh, and other political organizations where they have local forces that organize based on local issues. So I encourage people to reach out. If you're in the party, reach out to your local NAACP and say, look, we agree with the statement that just came out. How can we build on this? Because that's how we build this mass.
Exactly. Yes, I think I really do agree that the NAACP might have a branch in a place where there doesn't exist another kind of organization. One more question on the ceasefire. Rosanna, do you think there's been one or what are the most effective ways? What has really moved the Biden administration and others? What do you think are the most effective tools we've got in our toolkit so far? And can we use these things to unify the working class?
Well, I think I think aside from, the beginning when people went out and started demonstrating and it mounted to and it spread out to other organizations, to, the various aspects, various organized groups. I think also what has an effect is the the speaking out of groups that you don't normally hear about, get involved politically in these matters, such as the NAACP, but also groups such as like marathon runners, or organizations of clubs that deal with I don't know, tennis, or the
Mhm.
the people that are normally don't speak out as a group are speaking out. And then you have the latest issue with the some of the corporations are now pressuring Biden, and that's gonna, because they've been pressured and they don't want to lose their money, and they feel a threat that they're going to lose their money and their leverage and stuff like that. So they're also providing that pressure for Biden. So it's a
Mhm.
culmination, I mean, not a culmination, but it's a mounting pressure to the point where it cannot be ignored any longer. It cannot be blamed on leftists and radicals or rowdies or malcontents. It can no longer be blamed on that. It has to be. He can't. Everybody's speaking out about it. With of course exceptions, but for the most part, and it's mounting. It's mounting, the cruelty that's happening, the injustice, the money that's being taken away from this country and to meeting the people's needs is also needs to be considered and being brought out. So all of those things, people are becoming much more aware of the line. Where's the who represents who, and whose interests, who really has working people's interests.
Mhm. Well, let's move the agenda. We have a couple of other important topics to talk about today. And one is the SCOTUS decision, a unanimous decision, which was to not take on the case that Judge Kasmarek in Texas started. And I think SCOTUS is especially noted. I think some uh, Supreme Court justices like Samuel Alito are notorious for completely ignoring protests and saying they don't matter to them at all. And Joe, I just wonder, from your perspective, is mass struggle reflected in judicial decisions when judges make these decisions? Do they are they reflecting also the pressure of a mass struggle?
I think that the biggest mistake that the ruling class right has made over the last decade, 2 decades, was the Dobbs decision. They messed up big time. I mean, big time. And the fact that this was a unanimous decision, they can say what they want. Clarence Thomas and Alito and Roberts and the rest of them, that they're being objective, that they don't listen to baloney, salami. You know, it's about, Kavanaugh, the rapist, was the one that wrote this opinion. So
Mhm.
I don't believe it. Don't believe the hype. They are listening, and they know that there's an election coming up, and they're trying to not to clean up their mess a little bit and not make matters worse. So and by the way, this is a bunch of the right wing majority are judicial right wing activists. They're not, some,
Mhm.
sit on the by the fireplace or look at the evidence, weigh it back and forth. No, 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 no. They they are on a mission, and they have an agenda, and they're responding to public pressure. So once again, I think it behooves us to keep the pressure on.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Kasmarek saying that a dentist is going to be personally affected by mifepristone is just too ridiculous. Well, Rosanna, how? I mean, since the Dobbs decision came down, that was 2 years ago this month. How do you see the struggle for reproductive rights changing over that period of time? Has it intensified? Has it changed in its character or its nature, or have we gotten better at coalition building in that period in these 2 years that we've really struggled?
Well, definitely, I think it's taken a different level. We see it in the ballot box, with the win in Kentucky and Ohio. Um,
Hmm.
so it includes, mass demonstrations, but it's also branched out to electoral, education, pressures, on different ends. So I think, and even even folks who may not agree with the issue of abortion, but they agree with the fact that that women have a right to choose, and that I think is also key and important, that they can differentiate that and speak up as needed to defend people's rights.
I see it really connected with democratic rights too, because the majority of people in this country do believe in the right to control one's own reproductive future. The only way they can stop that is by stamping all over our democratic rights, like they tried to do in Ohio last year by taking away citizens' initiatives. So we really see the connection between democratic rights uh, and reproductive rights. Kay, one more question on this is, how is the connection? We've just had our convention and we talked a lot about socialism and the struggle for socialism and the struggles against capitalism. How do you see the struggle for reproductive rights connected with the bigger fight against capitalist exploitation? I know that's a
I,
big question.
yeah, it is a very big
So,
question. So many different, but I think very basically, reproductive rights affect everyone, uh, especially women. I think the right wing in this country were fools to think that they could come into office uh, and not have completely shut down all forms of protest and mass struggle and try to assault the rights of at least half of the U.S. working class, and at least half of the U.S. period, to say nothing of the working class. I think women put in a lot of work that goes unpaid and underpaid, and a lot of women are connected with men who also care about this, who are learning about this struggle. I'm just thinking about how things have developed since even 2017, when we had the largest single day protest in US history was was the Women's March, marching against Trump's policies that were anti-reproductive rights. And so I think when we think about how all of this fits together, we have to remember that we have to bring everybody on board. Socialism lifts from the bottom, right? And when you lift from the bottom, everybody comes up. And so when we're dealing with reproductive rights, we have to think about who is this affecting? And really, it's everybody. Because when we're talking about reproduction, we're talking about kids, we're talking about women, we're talking about the people who have to provide for them and how they provide for themselves, how families are built and structured, which, families have to fight off against the pressure of capitalism that's tearing them apart. And so, really, this is like such a basic issue. Um, and they messed up with this one. And I hope they continue to mess up and that we can continue to develop on those failures, because, this is really critical. People are talking about this as a political issue, which it is, but it's not just about the campaigns. This is really about human rights, like very, very, very basically. And human rights are political, and people are
mhm.
starting to make that connection in their millions, right? People are saying that, oh, if all we do is focus on making money and giving cuts to these corporations, then we're going to put ourselves in danger. And the women's movement, the reproductive rights movement, And I'll even squeeze in a hint of the LGBTQ movement because I know we're going to be talking about that. Uh, that's all. That's all connected, and I love the work that's being done there.
Exactly. Yes, you anticipated my next question, which is actually I'm going to put you on the spot again, Kay, because I just wonder. I mean, well, first of all, for everyone, happy Pride Month today. This week in Columbus, Ohio, we're celebrating Pride and Juneteenth in the same week. So it's going to be a busy week for festivals, and then the Columbus Club will have a booth at our community festival, which is a huge festival at the end of every June. But Kay, in the heightened political climate that we have this year, what's the significance for you of Pride Month this particular June? Is it given everything that's going on around us this month and this year, what does it mean to you this year as opposed to other years? Okay.
Uh, I really think, I mean, I think this in any given year, but especially this year, pride means to me personally, and I think a lot of people, uh, asserting their right to exist and to do so openly and to do so with pride. I think the political consciousness in the LGBTQ movement has heightened in just the past few months, especially because of the genocide, uh, because people are seeing their LGBTQ siblings in Palestine uh, used as props, saying, "Oh, we have to support the war because you know you really think that LGBTQ people are safe in Palestine." And I know that my club uh, in Queens, we attended Queens Pride just a couple of weeks ago, and we joined in with other organizations and community-based organizations specifically. I have to point that out because some of the
Mhm.
nonprofits didn't go along with that, uh, who are saying adamantly, fervently, we won't allow you to use queer bodies to justify genocide. That's not your place. That's literally the
Wow.
definition of pinkwashing. That term, pinkwashing, was invented to talk about specifically Israel's policies saying that we're a safe haven for queer people in the Middle East and the only one. That's not for them to say. And, I struggle not to tear up talking about this, but it's really about our right to exist. Because there are people on this earth who don't want us here because we represent the ability to live in capitalism and build for something better. And, you know, we have to stand up for that. We have to defend that space. And we won't allow anything else to happen.
Beautifully put, Kay. Thank you. Rosanna, even though there's sometimes a feeling in these areas that, things will get better and better and better as we go along. But this year has seen a real step back in the record number of anti-LGBTQ bills that have been proposed and also passed in state legislatures across the country. And in the Senate as well, I know Lindsey Graham was trying to promote a 15-week ban. But how should we respond, especially to the state level initiatives? How can we best fight against those, especially in states like Ohio? Hopefully, Ohio won't be gerrymandered for much longer because we have an initiative coming up on the ballot. But right now we have a super majority of GOP, and they're really going after the LGBTQ community. How is what's our best strategy there, Rosanna?
Well, first of all, I would like to add to
Mhm.
what Kay was saying that it's about a pride to exist, to be able to exist. But I see it not, but I see it further down in that the way that capitalism divides us is by pointing out our differences and putting a negative light on it. And pride, the pride to exist and pride to love whoever you want goes further in us accepting each other for who we are. and that acceptance is also a threat to the capitalist, because they can no longer divide us. So I think it's I see it as even more that way. Less. I know, when our family members came out, there was a whole, the family struggled with it, but in the end they accepted, and uh, and it's kind of like everybody has a right, and even some of my right wing family are accepting of their siblings. So I think it really takes us further down the road in that aspect. I think the way to do it is you've got to vote. You have to vote. You have to run. We have to run candidates in our local communities. We have to vote the most progressive candidate, and continue to vote for the most progressive candidate. I really like the fact that the union started saying we're not just going to automatically vote for a candidate because they're popular. We're going to see what their record is in defending workers' rights. This was, I believe, some years ago. They took that position. I think it's a great position, and it shows that the direction is to vote in much more progressive candidates. Yes, it takes work. Yes, they're not perfectly to the left or even perfect candidates, but we keep pushing that margin and keep pushing for even more progressives. And then we also have to look at, as communists, where can we run our own candidates? In our local school boards or in our local city councils or anywhere else that we see an opportunity to put in more progressive folks. Also, the judges. The judges have played an important role this past period. People had pretty much ignored the judges, but they've been very key in many ways. So I say to everybody, first and foremost, you got to vote. You have to vote.
Thank you. And voting, I mean, we run our own candidates. We are running a candidate in Ohio at a local level. But when it comes to the presidential race, there's two choices. It's going to be one of two people who emerge victorious, and voting third party is maybe voting, is not voting for a person who's going to win that vote, but instead voting for and instead losing an opportunity to vote in a way that will really be an effective strategic vote. So maybe we could, Joe, I could turn to you. And we had a really good article. I thought why protest is important, because people see that they're not alone, and that it starts debates to have protests, and persistence is necessary. But one of the things is the reverberating effects that mass struggle has down the line, maybe even on an area that you're not directly affecting. I know we had a big struggle for union rights in 2011 in Ohio that ended up really serving well in the 2012 elections. But Joe, how do you think struggles for LGBTQ rights in particular, what kind of reverberating effects will that have down the line?
Well, I think that Kay is right, in putting forward the idea that we're not going to let nobody invade our space. And Kay is my sibling, and if what happens to them happens to me, and what happens to me happens to my next door neighbor and my coworker and my children, and on down the line. And I think that increasingly we are again becoming aware of our mutuality. We're caught up in this web of mutuality, interdependence, and that suffering is collective, and changes collective, and I think that there's a growing awareness of it, and not just domestically, but also internationally, which is why there's such outrage of opposition to what's happening in Gaza. And there's an awareness that not all of us are affected in the same way. The people of color are affected disproportionately. Women are affected disproportionately. LGBTQ people are affected disproportionately. But even those who may feel that may understand that they know that they're eventually coming for them too, coming for us, and so
Mhm.
all of us have to. And I think that one of the things that has happened over the last 25, 30 years is that there's been a sea change in public perception about LGBTQ rights, you know. And now upwards, if you believe the polls, 70, 80% of the American people support equal rights, which is a huge thing. And that happened because of the self-movement and self-initiative of the LGBTQ community without question. And it was built on by civil rights struggles of African Americans, gender struggles of women, and so on and so forth. So all of these things are producing the possibility for not only a revolution in values, but a revolution in our, I don't know what you want to call it, our material circumstances, our politics, our economy, and ultimately that's what has to change. So I'm very optimistic, and these right-wing forces that are trying to use the issues of race and gender as what do they call it, wedge issues, you know. They're trying to change they're going to have about as much success of changing that as, like Du Bois once said, of changing the constellation of the stars. You know, you can try, but what we're doing is in the process of becoming an irresistible force, and but we can't count on that to happen automatically. We have to fight for it, and that's exactly what's happening.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Thank you all. We have a quick mailbag. Let's have a quick look at our mailbag questions this time. It says, what is the CPUSA's stance on religion? Kay, how do you perceive the CPUSA's point of view about religion and religious practice and institutions?
I think the party knows and incorporates in its work a knowledge of the difference that exists in different religious traditions and different strands of those traditions as they have occurred historically. And so we are very aware of progressive religious traditions, thinking in the legacy of like Frederick Douglass and Martin Luther King, uh, where we welcome people who are, who have faith or who, follow a religion or creed to join with us, whether in the streets or, as a friend of the party or even as a party member. We have a religious commission to help us think about how we get involved with religions uh, because there are traditions in which religion serves as a progressive force, and we definitely welcome that. I'm thinking of with the ceasefire, the African American ministers were among the first to call for Biden to call for an end to the genocide in Gaza, and
Mhm.
so we recognize that, we welcome it, and we work alongside those people.
Thank you. Rosanna, are members of any faith welcome in the Communist Party USA?
Most definitely. All is welcome in our party as long as you agree with our constitution and party program. You
Mhm.
know, the rest is secondary in many ways. I mean, I was raised Catholic, and we were raised to love thy neighbor, to stand up for each other, to feel for each other. Those are not wrong ideas. They're very good ideas. Um, we have recognized that the institution, some religious institutions represent the wealthy, but we also recognize that we're in this battle and we have to join forces together. And the question of God is is set aside to the question of feeding the least of thee.
Mhm. Thank you. Joe, do you have anything to add as the last word on religion in the party these days?
God is not my enemy. Capitalism is.
All right.
Period.
Amen.
Yes, we'll all say amen to that, even the atheists among us, I think. So thank you so much. Well, thank you all. This was really, I thought, really good material coming out. I think we can agree that mass struggle is important and effective and is the task of the day right now. So thank you all thank you, Joe. Thank you, Rosanna. Thank you, Kay. And thank you all for watching. And definitely send in your mailbag questions. I think we're at gmr@cpusa.org. Send in any questions. We had a great question and answer session at the convention, and we welcome any further discussion along those lines here on GMR. So thank you, and I'll close by saying we should stay safe, stay strong, and stay in the fight. Goodbye, everybody.